Okay, so I've been wanting to do a visual video for a while now, and I recently was taking to looking at my bookshelves and thought it would be nice to do a trip down memory lane and just, have a look at my bookshelves with you all. This is not going to be a book unhauling or a book hauling or anything like that, but just having a look at my shelves. This is also not a to be confused with a bookshelf tour. I traditionally do two bookshelf tours a year, one in June, one in December. This is just me looking at the books that I have on my shelves, maybe taking out a couple of them and talking about special memories that I have with them. So let's begin. Now, I have my camera up really high at the moment because I'm trying to get that very top shelf of this bookshelf that you can see. And you can see half of the Brandon Sanderson books. The top halves have been cut off, but I cannot hold this camera any more stable and have it any higher. But I did want to talk first off about my Brandon Sanderson fantasy works. I decided to put them up on this first bookshelf just for ease of access. And I'll talk about them more in just a moment, actually, because I wanted to actually talk about this particular bookshelf. So if you actually go back in my channel to the very first videos I did on BookTube, you would notice that I actually didn't have a bookshelf at all. This is the very first bookshelf that I bought, and I bought it after I had started doing BookTube because I had books piling up everywhere and I just out of necessity needed to find a bookshelf. Now, this particular one is a 2x4. So what I mean by that is each section, so like you can see this square is a section. So each square, there are four going down on each side. And so I have, 2x4. And so I started with this shelf and started filling it up over time. And if you were to go back and look at all of the videos I've done in my booktube career, you would see this bookshelf slowly start to build up. And then on the side here, you can see over there I have a black back bookshelf. That one is the most recent bookshelf I acquired. I acquired that from my sister. And this one that you can just see in the frame, this white shelf, was the second one that I acquired. We'll talk about that, this one and that one a little later on, but now we're going to continue to focus on this one. So up at the very top here, you can see the Brandon Sanderson books, and obviously I have a lot of memories associated with my Brandon Sanderson books. I remember the very first book that I read was that one right there, Mistborn: The Final Empire, and I had no idea what to expect going into that one, but obviously ultimately ended up falling in love with it. And Brandon Sanderson revolutionized fantasy for me with that book. So from Mistborn: The Final Empire, I went on to read The Well of Ascension and The Hero of Ages and gave them all 5 stars, and then jumped immediately into this brown one here, which is The Alloy of Law. And then went on to read the other 2 books after that. And then, suddenly I had this entire Sanderson section, which is just incredible for someone like me. But obviously I'd love to start pulling books out and showing them to you, but I don't know if I will. So, yeah, okay, fine. I'll pull some out for you just to give you some very quick basic memories that I have of them. So I thought I would quickly display my White Sands books because I have a memory attached to acquiring these books, not about reading them. I've spoken about reading them many times, but about acquiring them. I will never forget this. It was so incredibly hard for me to track these books down. You'll have no idea. I was so stressed. And the funniest thing is that these 3 books are graphic novels, which if you're not familiar with the term, graphic novels is just a fancy schmancy way of saying comic books in a novel form. And so that's not something I'm used to reading, and I'm not really a fan of that sort of thing, but I acquired an audio edition of this entire White Sands series on graphic audio, which I absolutely loved. But just tracking down these books, and the only reason I wanted to track down these books is because I wanted the entire Sanderson collection. I was never really a book collector per se, but after falling in love with Mistborn Era 1, I decided that I wanted to collect as much of Sanderson's works as I could and have that proud collection on me. But these 3 were so hard to track down. I remember calling every bookstore that I could in my country and getting absolutely nowhere. And then one bookstore was kind enough to point out a comic book store that we had in the city in Melbourne. And I contacted them and they said, look, we did have White Sand. We don't have it right now, but they're probably going to come back in January. I think I was asking this in around November, December of that year. And so I contacted them back in January and they still didn't have them in. And I kept looking and I honestly don't know how I ended up acquiring them. I wish there was an end to this story that would be satisfying where I could say, this is where I located them. But it was so hard to track these books down. Now, number one, which is this one, is hardcover, and number three, which is that one, is hardcover. But number two, this one is a paperback. And yeah, I don't think I could ever part with these Sanderson books that I currently have. I did part with Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians because I didn't like that book. But especially I don't think I could part with these three books because of just how much effort it took to actually track them down and purchase them. And also, once I finally did, they were incredibly expensive. I'm not someone who is just spending willy-nilly when it comes to books. If books are overly expensive, I take a second look at it, and 9 times out of 10, I do say no to purchasing a book. But with these ones, because they were Sanderson, I ended up buying them. But anyway, that's the White Sand story. Very quick discussion on purchasing stories. This is Mistborn Era 1. So you have book 1 there, The Final Empire, book 2, The Well of Ascension, and book 3, The Hero of Ages. What was interesting about purchasing these editions were that they were the American edition, Tor Publishing to be specific. These editions you cannot find in this country. And in fact, I think about 90% of the books that I own, you cannot purchase those editions in this country. So I just want anyone who's a casual viewer of my channel to appreciate, if you don't live in America, how hard it is to track down American editions of books. I know that a lot of people love the UK editions of Sanderson's works, but I'm just not a fan of them. And the only editions that we generally have access to in Australia are UK editions if UK and US editions have been published. To give you a comparison idea, the book that I now have next to The Hero of Ages, Elantris, that one there, that is the UK edition. So that's how the UK edition looks. All of them are white, the background is white, and then you have that small little picture there that covers about 2/3 of the cover. That does pop out because it's a white background, but I have to say, personally for me, and maybe, the grass is always greener on the other side, but I think that the Mistborn Era 1 books, the editions, look a whole lot better than this Elantris one. I find that it looks rather boring, but I think maybe the reason for that is because every single UK edition of Brandon Sanderson's fantasy works that we have here in Australia, they all have that same theme. They're a white cover with a little splash of something just right there in the middle, and that's all that we have. Where even if you look at this one, and this one, they all have different background colors. This one's more like a light brown, this one's more like a grey black, and this one is a dark blue. So they're certainly a lot more interesting and contrasting and beautiful compared to the boring UK editions, but those are my thoughts. In fact, just quickly, and ignore the indentations you can see on the books and the other shelves. I was just doing that so I could display the books. But the three over on this side, Way of Kings, Words of Radiance, and Oathbringer, are the one book bind up hardcover editions. You cannot get them in Australia. The only way to get them is to get them delivered. In Australia, remember the Elantris edition I was showing you earlier, you get a part 1 and a part 2 that looks like the Elantris one does. Now, I mean, if you like cohesion when it comes to your series, and you want them to all look the same colour, then I can see the appeal of the UK ones, because you can see with the last one over here, which is Arcanum Unbounded, as well as Elantris, which is now there, and Warbreaker, which is there, they're the same colour and they have different colouring for the Brandon Sanderson name, the this one at the end. I Can't Unbound. It is, sorry, this one is harder to see Brandon Sanders's writing. It is there, it's just the angle. So I can understand with uniformity, but honestly, I just prefer the US editions. That's just how it is. Let's move on. So in this section, I have classics, and then classics go all the way to the white book here at the end. So all these are the classics that I've read and haven't unhauled as yet. I'll just pull out a couple of different ones and talk about some memories. Okay, so there are many books I could have pulled out, but I'll just pull these out for very quick memories. And then there were none by Agatha Christie. This was the only edition that I could get, but I do like it. I think it reflects the book well. This was the first time that I read a mystery where I really enjoyed reading a mystery. Really, it's few and far between with me enjoying mysteries, but I thought that was fantastic. I do want to read more Agatha Christie in the future, but I thought that was absolutely fantastic. The green one, which what annoys me about the green one, which by the way is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas, is how easily a lot of the masks, as you can see, have been scratched. I don't like that they've been scratched. I wish that I could have avoided that, but I haven't done anything to mistreat the book. I treat my books incredibly delicately, and all I've done with that book is just basically put it into the shelf, you know, sandwiched in between two other books. So I don't get how they're smudging so easily, but the edition is still gorgeous, even despite the scratching. Great classic. That book truly had me falling in love with classics. And this one over here, Rebecca by Daphne du Maurier, this is the 80th edition, or 75th or 80th? Yeah, 75th would make sense. The 80th edition of Rebecca was a great book. I really enjoyed it until the end. The end really annoyed me. But anyway, that's fine. I'm not a fan of open endings. But yeah, and I love the cover. And the cover took me a lot to find. So there you go. Just some highlights of classics there. And just to make a quick point for anyone who was looking at the shelf in its entirety earlier, the Shadow of the Wind and A Little Life that I have displayed here, neither of those are technically classics, at least not yet. The Shadow of the Wind is an adult historical fiction, and A Little Life is a hard-hitting contemporary. However, both of them affected me in an incredibly profound way, and so I'm considering them classics for myself, which is why they're there. The Shadow of the Wind broke a massive barrier for me because I really don't like historical fiction. 9 times out of 10, they just don't work for me. But for some reason, this book did. And so it broke a barrier and therefore for me became an instant classic hit for me based on that. And A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara could easily be placed into my contemporary section or even my LGBTIQ plus section. It's kind of like a male, hard-hitting contemporary, if that makes sense. Oh, I don't even know if it's male, honestly. We're dealing with a protagonist who I think is gay or bi. I'm trying to remember. But anyway, I remember more the hard-hitting side of what was going on. But for me, it was a classic because it affected me in such a profound way. I was bawling my eyes out by the end. That, to me, makes it an instant classic, and that's why it's in my classics section. Oh, and that golden book up here with the golden spine, that is A Return to Love by Marianne Williamson. It's technically a memoir, but also it broke a memoir barrier for me. No, sorry, it's not a memoir. I do apologize. That is very wrong. It is a self-help book. But it broke a personal barrier for me because it's all about returning to a place of love. And, you know, a lot of people believe money makes the world go round, and I'm someone who has a deep, profound belief that love makes the world go round. So that book has had a massive impact on me and my life and a profound effect on me as a person, and therefore I'm deeming it a classic. So there you go. All right. So then from Rebecca onwards, we have the Nevermore trilogy and the first 2 books in the Personal Demon series. I did not get the third physical book of the third book in the Personal Demons trilogy because it was too expensive for me. See what I mean? Most of the time it's a no if it's too expensive. But yeah, they have good memories for me, but not enough for me to want to pull them out and discuss them, except for the fact that Personal Demons is the first book that I picked up on this channel. I have to be technical because it's not the first book I finished, but it is the first book that I picked up on this channel. And whether or not I wanted to even unhaul the second one, the first one will always stay with me for the sake of that memory. The very first book I picked up on my channel. This shelf here is my black books shelf. And I love this shelf so much. I can't believe it. I came up with this idea recently and I just love the contrast of all of these black books on a white bookshelf. I just think it stands out so well. I did some minor adjusting. I have 13 reasons why here on the end, but it was on this end. But I moved it because I wanted this entire square to be Shadowhunter books. But 13 Reasons Why probably doesn't really fit into this shelf aside from the fact that it is a black coloured book. But it is a contemporary. The rest are all fantasies. So I have my Del Toro Quest Series 1 there. I have Series 2 and Series 3 on my SAS list to get to at some point. It probably won't be this year, however. Then I have my Twilight Saga there, and then I have these first 6 here. The Shadowhunters the Mortal Instruments series, and then these 3 that have the blue up here. They are the Infernal Devices trilogy, and I am currently at the time of filming. I'm reading the first book in the series that I always find hard to name. Eldest Curses series, which actually appears partway through this original series. But I love the spine and how it continues on. This is the only series where the spine does continue. Very interesting story about that continuing spine, however, with the original Shadowhunter series, is that I actually purchased all of those books one by one and just prayed that they would all be the right edition, because I got them from Amazon and Amazon was not showing me the spine, so I was just praying that it would work out. And then the same deal with Infernal Devices. I had no idea if that was going to be continued spine or not, and it was. Interestingly, with the one I just said, The Eldest Curses, the spine does not continue on. So that's going to be interesting to see how that messes things up. But I do love how it's like black coloured books on a white bookshelf. I love how that does look. All right, I'm going to bring the camera down a little bit so we can have a look at the other 2 rows. Okay, that's a bit more comfortable for me. So now looking at this row, I have a lot of sci-fi. Sci-fi ends where Game Changer is there. So Game Changer and that way, sci-fi. I wanted to put them in this particular shelf because I wasn't displaying my sci-fis as much as I wanted to. This black shelf, which you can't really see on the angle that we're on, it really is hard for me to display everything in that shelf, because you might be able to tell from this angle that the black shelf cuts off there because of where the white shelf is. So I can only display books when you're coming from this angle. I can only display books that go up to halfway through the black shelf. And so therefore my sci-fi books were getting lost. And I realized that I wanted to read more sci-fi this year because I haven't read a lot in general. So I thought if I display them on this particular shelf, then I'll be more likely to do so. Yeah, so I do have some memories. I have a botched memory, actually, of that very first book you can see. So yeah, the Reckoners trilogy, the original trilogy of Steelheart, Firefight, and Calamity. The interesting thing is I actually borrowed Steelheart from my library. This was very early on. I discovered that Brandon Sanderson had released another series that I wasn't aware of, so I picked it up thinking it would be a fantasy. Turned out it was a superhero sci-fi, but that was fine. I still enjoyed the book. What annoyed me was the library edition was a grey cover, and I really loved the cover so much, and it was a hardcover. So I ordered the hardcover edition and ended up with this blue thing. Now, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I really do love Firefight. I love the fire. That's the explosion of fire in Firefight. I'm sorry that the visuals stuffing up there. And I love the cover of Calamity, but I just wish that I got the grey cover for Steelheart. But these 3 I actually got in a box set, so yeah, they do look very similar, which I appreciate. If you were with me when my channel first began, you would know, or when I first read this book, you would know why I'm showing you Skyward right now. So this is the Skyward trilogy. I think the 4th one is either out or coming out soon. I will read it. I will get to it when I do. But the reason I'm pointing out Skyward, this one right here, is because, again, it was a situation of there are US editions and there are UK editions. I love the US edition of Skyward, which is this book that... that you're seeing right now. I love that it is purple. The trust me when I say the visual you're seeing is not doing it justice. It is darker than it actually looks, which is saying something because it already looks dark. But I love purple and black as colors on anything really. I think that they just look great together, those two colors. And I love this cover, but the UK edition, it was horrible. It took me a long time to track down this book, and I spent more money on this book than I care to admit. So that was in the 1 out of 10 section where I said, I don't care how much it costs, I need this edition. But yeah, this is another lot of Sanderson sci-fis. Very quickly before moving on from sci-fi, I wanted to display Bot Wars, Dark Matter, and Game Changer, and I'll tell you why. In March of 2020, I read Bot Wars, this book right here, and I wanted to expand on my genres. I'd never, get this, never read a sci-fi before. And so I thought, let's just give it a go. I was very scared of reading sci-fi because robots, outer space, aliens, it was just never my thing. And so I thought, look, let's just give it a go. We'll see how we go. It's probably not for me, but how do I know unless I give it a go? I am so glad I did because I fell in love with Bot Wars. And so Bot Wars is what started my sci-fi journey. Then I eventually went on to read Dark Matter as well as Game Changer, and they helped me really hone my idea of what I want in a sci-fi. So I really came to appreciate that those two books for that reason as well. So yeah, I'm really glad I picked up Bot Wars because if I didn't, I probably still wouldn't read sci-fi to this day. But then with Dark Matter and Game Changer really helping me hone and specifically know what I want when I read a sci-fi to ensure that I'm going to enjoy what I'm picking up. So yeah, just need to give them a quick shout out. I won't pull these books out, but they are a selection of my dystopian works. So we have Legend, Prodigy, and Champion, which are the first three books in the Legend series by Mari Lu, The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, and Scythe and Thunderhead, which is the first two books in the Arc of a Scythe series by Neil Shusterman, or Shusterman, depending on how you say it. And I haven't put Game Changer away, but I will in a moment. I just realised that. But anyway, this is not my complete works of dystopians. I have the selection series way up there, so you'll see that at some point later on. But yeah, the rest of my dystopians sit there, and it makes sense because dystopians are considered subgenre to sci-fi. I don't personally agree with that, but since a lot of people do, that's where I've put it. So there you go. And then for some odd reason, and I still don't know why, but I have My Dark Vanessa and The Lost Apothecary sitting there because, and that doesn't make sense because both My Dark Vanessa My Dark Vanessa is a hard-hitting contemporary. Oh, sorry, it's technically a literary fiction. I'm so sorry, but if I wanted to not be so technical, I'd call it a hard-hitting contemporary. And then The Lost Apothecary is a historical fiction, which should put it up with The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón, but I don't deem that as a classic-worthy book like I do with The Shadow of the Wind. But I do quickly want to pull out The Lost Apothecary. Okay, I'll tell you the story and then I'll pull out The Lost Apothecary because it's better if I tell you the story and then show you the edition. So, I remember seeing this edition of The Lost Apothecary 2 years ago in November and December when I was deciding on books that I was eagerly anticipating that were new releases for 2022. And I read the synopsis, the premise of The Lost Apothecary. It sounded really interesting. I saw the cover. It was a really beautiful cover too. So I decided I was going to purchase the book, but I was going to make sure that I purchased this specific cover. I went door to door in my country looking for this cover. And I tell you what, I got the same response from every bookstore. No, we don't have The Lost Apothecary. Yes, we can order in The Lost Apothecary. No, we cannot order in the edition that you want of The Lost Apothecary. And all I could think was, but that's the whole point. I don't want to purchase The Lost Apothecary from you if I can't get this gorgeous edition. How beautiful is that? The purple background, the flowers that border it, the apothecary bottle in gold. It is a gorgeous edition. Now, again, I do not remember how I found this one. I wish I did. I wish I'd written it down. The stories would be so much more entertaining if Mr. Fancy could give you the conclusion and say, I found it here. But anyway, but I worked hard. I was determined to find this cover or to not read the book at all. And eventually I did. And I thought the book was okay. I didn't think it was horrible. I didn't think it was amazing, but I cannot unhaul it because, one, it took way too long to find and way too much effort, but also it is so beautiful that I just can't bear to part with the beauty of the cover that is The Lost Apothecary. And on that bottom shelf, which you can't see me there, on this bottom shelf, I have cozies, and I also have an ornament, which is something new that I've started doing, putting a bit of ornaments here and there. And so that's a mirable. Yeah, it's fine. It doesn't relate at all to what the genre is. But anyway, it's my cozy mystery section. This is not a full extent of the cozies I've read, nor is it a full extent of the cozies that I still currently own. I've read a number of cozies, especially last year. I read, I think, like 65 cozies last year, and I've read more since this year. But these are the standout cozy mystery series that I read in 2022. So, so over here we have the Poppy McAllister first 7 books. Then under that I have the Amish Matchmaker books by Amanda Flower. Then here I have the Secrets and Scrabbles series by Josh Lanyon. Then including this tall red one, which is a book of novellas, and going across to there, I have the Amish Candy Shop by Amanda Flower. And here I have the Spelford Cove mystery series by Samantha Silver. I had to think what her name was there. I'm going to pull out just a couple of quick things for you to shed some light on things, and then we will finish with this part of this really long, funny enough, bookshelf tour. First up, books 1 and 2 in the Poppy McAllister mystery series. On your left, we have Class Reunions are Murder. On the right, you have Midnight Snacks are Murder. And I just want to say that Midnight Snacks are Murder and all the other books in the Poppy McAllister Class Reunions are Murder, and all the other books that I have in the Poppy McAllister mystery series have the book on the right, Midnight Snacks are Murder, to thank for their existence here on my bookshelf, because I really did not like Class Reunions are Murder. I almost will go as far to say that I hated it, but I don't like using that word. So I would just say I really did not like Class Reunions are Murder. And it took me a lot to convince me to read Midnight Snacks are Murder. I'm glad I did, because I loved it. That book right there deserves a gold medal. It really does, because it ensured that I was going to keep reading the series, and therefore I have the rest of these books that you see up to and including the purple one there, purely because of Midnight Snacks are Murder. So I had to give a shout out to Midnight Snacks. 1, 2, 3, Fereverto. Okay, now we have the Amish Matchmaker series. Midnight, I don't know why I'm saying midnight. Matchmaking can be murder, courting can be killer, and marriage can be mischief, all by Amanda Flower. The interesting thing about this series is, I'm going to be honest with you, even though I decide what goes in my bookshelf and why, this series does not deserve to be on my favourite series for Cozy Mystery Series for 2023 section of my shelves. They are only there because of the stamp you see at the bottom with my favourite female author of all time's name, Amanda Flower. I did not love this series. I struggled through it. It just really wasn't the series for me. I thought Lois, who is the side character, was fantastic, but I wasn't a fan of Millie. And it is literally only there because it has the words Amanda Flower on it. And I couldn't bear to part with them because it's Amanda Flower's works. So just like with Brandon Sanderson, I'd love to collect all of Amanda Flower's works. That's why they're there. Before I show you what I want to show you with Secrets and Scrabbles, can we just take a moment to notice that yes, those books are in the correct order, and book number 1, the one on this end, is shorter than book 2, book 3 is shorter than book 2, and then books 4 and 5 are taller than books 1 and 3. Yes, this annoys me. Very much so. And despite and in spite of that fact, books 1 and 3 are the ones that I'm showing you because they hold a very special place in my heart. Book number 1, Murder at Pirates Cove, was the very first and so far only male cozy mystery I've ever read. Whether I love LGBTIQ plus books or not, my appreciation came from a place of, wow, this is something different, because every other cozy mystery series I've read has been following a protagonist who just so happens to be a straight female, and I didn't think that that barrier was going to be crossed. I did some research and found out there are some male cozies out there, and was very excited to read it. I liked Murder at Pirates Cove. I love the cover of Mystery at the Masquerade. That mask popping off of the purple background is absolutely gorgeous, and the visual does not do it justice. You need to see the book in person. It is much better in person. But the story as well behind it was absolutely fantastic. Yes, just indulge me for a moment. I have to show you all of the Amish Candy Shop Mystery Series books that are out so far, and we'll forgive The Witching Flower. It will be spoken about in a moment. Please don't be jealous. I am pulling you out very soon for a reason. Okay, we have Assaulted Caramel, Lethal Licorice, Premeditated Peppermint, Toxic Toffee, Marshmallow Malice, Lemon Drop Dead, Peanut Butter Panic, and then the novellas that accompany some of these books that are combined into the omnibus that is Amish Candy Shop Holidays. So Assaulted Caramel gets the biggest shout out from me. This was the perfect cozy mystery for me. It was culinary cozy. I love my culinary reads. It was about candy. How can you go wrong? While it was set in an Amish shop, we're following someone who is not Amish, so we learn the world with them. And we have some amazing characters, some amazing animals, not only in Assaulted Caramel, but throughout the course of the entire series. Most of these books received 5 stars from me. I just think this is a fabulous series, and this series, unlike Amish Matchmaker, definitely deserves to be where it is, because it probably was my favourite of all time cozy mystery series that I read in 2022. See, I told you, Witching Flower, there's no need to be jealous. I'm showing you 2 books instead of 1 for a reason, but we'll get to that in a moment. The Witching Flower on the left is book 1, Double Tartan Trouble is book 2 in this series, and I'm just going to be very brief because I'm running out of time to film here, and I'll be back with a part 2. But anyway, the book on the left, The Witching Flower, is the very first cozy mystery that I read. The very first one. This one started my cozy experience. This was the make or break for me. It had so much pressure on it. If it was crap, I wouldn't have kept reading cozies, but it was so good that I had to keep going. The reason I have Double Tartan Trouble, it's representing the rest of the series for me because I'm showing you that both books have a cat on the cover. And yeah, I would always say meow meow. So yeah, just imagine me tapping the cover and going meow 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 with everyone. All right, that is part 1, bookshelf 1. I hope you enjoyed it. I will be back with a part 2 very soon.